My name is Father Summerlin, and I've been a priest for almost 6.5 years. I was ordained in June 2019. Growing up, both my parents are Catholic. My mom was raised Catholic. My dad converted to Catholicism before my parents were married. They made the faith the center of our family's life. We prayed every single night together as a family, all three of us. Whoever was driving me to school in the morning, we would pray together on the way to school. We had a weekly hour of adoration at the parish. I think it was every Saturday night growing up, and I went with my parents pretty much every week. Sometimes we even went to more than just Mass on a Sunday. Sometimes we went to an extra Mass as well. So the faith is really kind of the centerpiece of our family's life, and for that I'm very grateful. When I received my calling to become a priest, I was 7th grade, so 13 years old, and how it happened, I actually heard the voice of God speak to me. It was very clear, and he told me, you are to be a priest. It was clear as day, and he repeated that phrase to me over a period of a couple weeks to make sure that I knew how serious it was. And then as quickly as he started speaking, then 2 weeks later, things were silent again. So that was the initial time and how I was called to be a priest. I was immediately filled with a fear, not because of God, but because of my lack of understanding of what being a priest was. I had already had a lot of my life planned out by that age. I knew I wanted to get married and have children. I even had it narrowed down to maybe which careers I wanted to pursue. I thought I was going to go to regular college and all those things. So I kind of saw it as God interrupting my plans. Coupled with I didn't even understand what priesthood was, even though my family was very faithful. The only time I saw a priest was on Sunday at Mass, maybe at confession once a month, when we went to confession once a month with the family, but I had no idea what he did. The other 6 days of the week, I thought he was probably okay, he just lives in his rectory all the time, pops out for Mass, and then goes back. So because of my misunderstanding, I didn't want to be a part of that. So that's where it is very important to understand our vocation before we can accept it. So because of my lack of understanding, I actually resisted the calling from God. I tried to run the complete other direction, actually. I never left the faith, I never stopped practicing the faith, but I didn't want to engage in a personal relationship with God because I was afraid he would remind me of what he had already called me to do. So I kind of shut the door of my heart to God, and that was probably a period of about 6 years until I finally accepted my vocation when I was a senior in high school. So I remember the day I said yes to God. It was December 23rd, 2010. So that was Christmas break of my senior year. I said yes to God. First of all, I had a spiritual director at the time, so that's why it is very important if you're discerning a religious vocation to find a spiritual director to meet with you. My high school chaplain was actually my spiritual director. I met with him like once a month. And he knew I knew what I was supposed to do, and so he had to put a little pressure on me. And he said, you need to make a decision about your vocation during Christmas break. And this was our meeting in December. So I didn't do it at first, but that was kind of always in the back of my mind, like, okay, Father knows what he's talking about. I probably should listen to him. So he kind of made me realize that he knew I was running away from God and he was trying to get me to turn back to him. So that was one thing. My spiritual director helped me. But also, the day I said yes to God, I kept going in the back of my mind saying, I don't know if I could live with myself knowing that I deliberately denied my vocation. I could have gone on, got married, had children, but I knew in the back of my mind throughout the rest of my life, I was always going to be thinking I should have been a priest. And I did not want to live with that. So what got me to say yes initially to God was obedience. Obedience to God, and then listening to my spiritual director as well. And then after I said yes to God, then the peace and the joy came later, which I was very grateful for. Somewhere between junior and senior year, so the older I got, the more I progressed through high school, the more angry I became because I knew I'm eventually going to say yes to my vocation, but I was not ready to. I was at a baseball game with some friends. I normally played baseball every year, but I had a surgery earlier, like several months prior, so I had to sit this one season out. So I was kind of forced to sit on the sidelines, and I decided to sit with some mutual friends that were a part of our circle of friends. I was sitting in between a couple different girls from our group of friends. One I did not know very well. The other one I knew pretty well, knew her for a little bit longer. The one that did not know me, she wanted to get to know me, so she was just asking a lot of questions about my life to get to know me. And she asked me a question that was always awkward for me to answer at that age, which was, what do you want to do after high school? I knew I was probably going to say yes to my vocation as a priest, but I didn't want to tell people that yet. I was not ready to, so I would say something like maybe, something I was interested in, and like if I would do a career. So I think that day I said I'd like to become a weatherman, meteorology, which is still is a hobby of mine. The friend that did not know me very well, she believed it because she did not know me. The friend who did know me very well, who had been quiet this whole time, she looks at me and says, what are you talking about? You're going to be a priest and you know it. A few hours before this conversation at the baseball game, I made a deal with God, and I said, God, if no one tells me, no one comes up to me and says, you'd make a great priest, or you should consider being a priest. If I don't get any more of those comments from anybody, I quit and I'm not going to the seminary. 3 hours later was that baseball game, and then during that baseball game was that friend who said, you're going to be a priest and you know it. So when you make a deal with God like that, you're going to be on the losing side of the deal. He's not going to change his mind just because you ask him to, because he knows what he's going to ask you to do is what's best for you. So do not make bargains with God like that. That usually ends with you being humiliated, like it was for me, and kind of getting a reality check. So don't do that. Just simply ask God to help you follow his will, and then all will be well. I never doubted the faith, as in if God was real or if the Catholic faith was the one true church. But there was a period of time, maybe halfway through seminary, where the devil got in there and he tried to get me to doubt my vocation, tried to convince me that the voice I heard from God and when I was 13 years old was not real, that all this was a lie. Again, because I was in constant communication with the spiritual director and with other priests, they quickly showed me that was a lie. So there was a brief period where I doubted my vocation about halfway through my seminary years. Anything related to the Eucharist has been most powerful for me. It never gets old to celebrate Mass every day. Again, I've said thousands and thousands of Masses, whether it's a Mass with 1,000 people attending or a Mass with 10 people attending. The bread and wine become the body and blood of the Son of God, and it becomes Jesus right in my own hands. That never gets old. I'm saying the words of consecration over the bread and the wine every single Mass is the best part of my day, and it always will be. Sometimes just holding the Eucharist, say if I have to transport the Eucharist from one place to another, I always think to myself, who am I that I get to hold the God of the universe, the all-powerful God in my own hands. So the Eucharist is incredibly powerful. The other sacraments are as well, but the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, and I'm so blessed to be the instrument through which the Eucharist comes to us. Outside of my priestly duties, I kind of have two main hobbies. First of all, I ride a motorcycle. I ride a Harley. Been riding a motorcycle, since my first year of priesthood is when I started. And then I also love to play golf. Not very good at it. Getting better, slowly shaving some strokes off. There's a couple men in my family that we play together periodically throughout the year. So how do you honor and glorify God through those? First of all, both those hobbies are outside, so I love being outdoors in the midst of God's creation. And then we also glorify God by making use of our physical bodies. And so both those hobbies involve our body. And so I glorify God through the physical use of my body in those sports. So before I was at CC, I was at St. Boniface and St. Lawrence Parish here in town, and before that I was at a parish in Carmel, Indiana. CC has not had a full-time priest in, I think it was since 1992. So I'm the first one since then, full-time. Before I was assigned here, I was one of many people saying Central Catholic needs to have a full-time chaplain. But when you suggest that, you don't often think of yourself being the one. So it was 2023 is when I first came here. I kind of had an idea that I was being moved at least from St. Boniface, St. Lawrence. I've been there 3 years. That is a typical amount of time for an associate pastor, is the 2 to 4 year range. I was kind of right in the middle of that. So I thought, well, it's pretty likely I'm going to be transferred somewhere, but I wasn't thinking here. I was thinking another parish probably. So Father Andrew Dzinski pulled me into his office one day. It was in the spring that year, and the bishop, when he moves different priests, he doesn't always tell them himself. He asks a few other priests that work with him to kind of share the load of telling priests. So I thought, oh, okay. Father Rudzinski is one of those priests that helps the bishop tell people they're moving. Okay, I know what this is about. I was like, what parish am I going to be receiving? So he says, Father Summerlin, Bishop Doherty has appointed you to be the full-time chaplain of Central Catholic. And I kind of had to pause for a minute. I was like, oh, really? It was not like I wasn't against it all. I just was not expecting it, even though I had been suggesting it before. And I think he could see the look on my face. And I was kind of like surprised. And he said, do you accept it? I said, yeah, sure, I do. I accept that position. And I knew, okay, there's some work to be done. There's not a priest that's been here before that I can ask for help on how he did things. So I did a lot of research and talking to different teachers here, talking to other priests maybe who have been in similar situations, so I could be as prepared as possible come August of that year. So that's how I ended up being here. The analogy I'm going to use is a race car on a racetrack. So a little bit of background, my mom is from Speedway, Indiana, and so the Indianapolis 500 was a big part of our family's life. I've been several years, and I'm actually planning on going again this May. So I want to think of the finish line on a racetrack, that is God, right? The early part of my years, it was like you're on the pace lap right before the first green flag. You're kind of going slow, but you're going towards the finish line where the flag's going to be waved. And that was kind of my faith life when I was young. I was going towards God, but not at a rapid pace, right? Just kind of coasting along, but still pointing my way towards God. When I heard my call to be a priest, when I started running away from God, so that was like going full speed away from that finish line on that first green flag. Like, how can I get away from this area as fast as I can? And then I finally, when I kind of had my time of surrender to my vocation, I started going back towards God, but this time it was full speed towards God through my years in the seminary and as a priest. So that's kind of the analogy I came up with. You know, when I was young, junior high, high school, as I mentioned before, I thought God's plan was going to ruin my life because I thought I knew what was best. But the longer I've been a priest, the more I've realized that this is the best thing for me. The vocation is not to make our life miserable. It's not just random, arbitrary. God chooses a vocation for us because He knows it is best for us. He knows it's our easiest path to heaven. And I can tell you, by being a priest for 6.5 years, I can say with certainty that priesthood is the easiest path for me to get to heaven. Could I have gotten to heaven in another vocation? Maybe, but it would have been more difficult. I definitely know that now. So I would say, like, we should always avoid the attitude to think we know better than God. We don't. The knowledge we have is very limited. We're oftentimes missing information. Sometimes our pride can get in the way, thinking that I want to do what I want to do. But God always knows what's best, so the priesthood has been the best thing for me, hands down.